Good morning or good afternoon, whatever the case may be for you. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Thank you for your service. I have a very special guest on today, Summer the dietitian, and I have to preface this by saying I am not a medical professional. Summer may be a medical professional, but she is not your registered dietitian. So if you hear something in the discussion that resonates with you, please write it down, make a note of it, and then talk to your care team about it. She is not giving out medical advice. She's just speaking about her expertise and experience. So, with that said, I also want to point out that it is Obesity Awareness Month and Movember, which is a focus on men's health. So, check into those things as well. So, without further delay, I will bring in Summer. Welcome, Summer. Thank
Hey,
you for joining us. How
thanks
are
for
you
having me.
today?
I'm excited to talk to you today. Good.
All right. Can you give us a little intro to your background?
Yeah, so my name is Summer. I'm on social media as Summer the dietitian. I'm a registered dietitian in Tampa, Florida. I've been a dietitian for like 12 years now. Prior to that, I was a pharmacy technician, so it's funny how worlds collide, but
Oh, you got a whole
I went back
gambit there.
I did. Yeah, I went back to school to be a dietitian because I personally was struggling with my weight and my nutrition. And so I'm a patient living with obesity on a GLP-1 now, a little over 3 years. I used to work in the hospital full time as a registered dietitian, helping people who were super, super sick. But when I started these medicines, I was just so blown away by how powerful they were and how amazing my experience was and how awesome the community was. And so I kind of pivoted and started working with people on GLP-1 medications. And now I've become super obsessed with the topic. It is all I ever talk about. I am a expert in GLP-1 nutrition. Essentially wrote the book on it, like literally wrote some books about it. But also when I came into this space 3.5 years ago, we really didn't have a lot of nutrition guidance or information, even in the medical community, about how to support people on these medications. So I've really been at the forefront of helping folks develop these guidelines, and in working with, at this point, probably thousands of patients and talking to people on social media, what works, what doesn't, what's good nutrition, what causes side effects, how people are struggling, where we can help as dietitians. And yeah, that's what I do. I'm currently the chief operating officer and lead dietitian at Vineyard. We're an online virtual metabolic health clinic with Dr. Spencer as our CEO. And like I said, I've written some books. So I have, I brought them. I
Yes.
wrote a whole book with my story and journey and more of a background on the medicines and obesity. And then in January on pre-order right now, I have a cookbook, which is what everybody asks for, is for recipes and ideas and things to eat. So I've written some books on the topic,
Awesome.
and I'm excited to talk to you today.
And for everyone watching, I have leaked her book in the description of the video, so you can order her book right now, and you can pre-order the cookbook that she also showed there. So if you're interested in that, those are in the description along with her social media links. So if I started a GLP-1 in 2024, and I'm sure my experience is not unlike many others where I was just given the prescription. I wasn't told how to use the medication, wasn't told about nutrition and diet and dietary needs and how to work out. And I had a background being a college athlete and how to work out. So, and also being a bariatric patient 2 times over. I'm a refugee from a lap band surgery and a gastric sleeve. So I had that background on how to eat, so to speak, and the medication helped me to eat within my caloric limit that they set for me as a gastric sleeve patient. What is the importance of seeing a dietitian with this medication specifically?
Yeah, I think that registered dietitians would love to say, I mean, we would love to work with absolutely everybody on these medicines, right? I would love to say that everyone in the whole world, not just on these medicines, but more people in general could benefit from working with a registered dietitian. But there's a lot of misunderstanding about what we do and how we work. So maybe we could talk about that later. But specifically for people on GLP-1 medications, like you said, you had all this experience from bariatrics and being an athlete before. I very rarely have met anyone starting a GLP-1 medication who doesn't at least have some basic understanding of
Yeah.
nutrition. Most of us have done every diet, every plan. We've been to dietitians before, we've been to doctors before. Most people have a pretty good idea of what is basic nutrition. At least I like to think so. But then we get really confused and really misguided by all the noise on the internet of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what's good, what's bad. And you get to a point where you like just don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
But when it comes to eating well on a GLP-1, we really take it back to the boring basics. And people kind of roll their eyes and I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to eat 3 balanced, basic, healthy-ish meals a day. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to count every gram of every food that you eat. You don't have to be super clean all the time. But there are some general guiding principles of good nutrition that are for everyone. That as a person on GLP-1 medications, the medication makes it easier to stick to and have a consistent
Yeah.
routine and eat healthy. I like to say that these medicines help me eat according to my best intentions
Yeah.
without going off the rails, without being impulsive, without being tempted, without overeating. Even on healthy foods, I used to overeat. Like I
Yeah.
used to require huge portions of food to feel satisfied. And so I would overeat on calories, even if the meals were healthy.
Yeah.
And then I would be easily tempted by a cookie or an ice
Yeah.
cream or something fun, right? And now these medicines for most people help people just eat in moderation for the first time in their lives, and they don't have to overthink it or over
Yeah.
diet.
Yeah.
And that's the majority of people. Now, of course, there are people on either spectrum who are really struggling to eat enough. Those are my favorite to work with because it's kind of fun to figure out how do we get you to eat more food. For a lot of people, it's the first time in their life they've ever been told to eat more food.
Yeah.
So it can be kind of fun to figure out and strategize around that, or dealing with side effects that can be kind of crummy in the beginning. And then on the flip side, there are still people on these medicines. They're great, but they're not perfect. There are still people who struggle to lose weight. There are still
Yeah.
people who need to layer in additional strategies, like maybe counting calories or being more specific or meal prepping or weighing and measuring their food. So we see the whole gamut as dietitians with people on these medications. And it's hard to say like there's this one perfect way of eating because there's not. We're all very different people and
Yeah.
different things work for different people. So registered dietitians specialize in individualizing whatever recommendation we give for you specifically one-on-one in that session. So there's guiding principles, protein, healthy carbs, fruit and veg, portion control, no skipping meals, stay hydrated, really the basics. But then the additional details is really where, if you're struggling with anything, that's where a registered dietitian can really help.
Nice. So I think I read that you are also in the bariatric space as well
I
before.
did work, yeah, I did work in a bariatric clinic for a little while. I did, early in my dietetics career, I worked in a really small rural hospital and I was the only dietitian. So I did everything. I did the food service, I did the inpatient, and we also had a bariatric surgeon. And that was, 10 years ago was all we had for people who had
Yeah.
a lot of weight to lose. And folks would need to meet with a dietitian before, and then they'd meet with me a couple of times after, and then they just kind of disappear. I would never see them again. And I always thought that that was difficult because I felt like people needed more support after surgery, but they got most of their support before surgery. It was all
Yeah.
about education. And
Yeah.
I would give people a little booklet and we'd go through the booklet and then you'd come back and I'd quiz you on it, see if you remembered what we talked about. And I'd check a box saying like, yep, this person got the education. You can go give them their surgery now. And I used to complain, like, we really should work with people more after surgery,
Yeah.
because we know that people struggle. They have this honeymoon time of like the first 6 to 9 months. They follow the diet that I educated them on as written. And then life starts lifing,
Yeah.
right? And it
Yeah.
gets harder to lose, and regain happens a lot in the bariatric community. And so I never really got to do the full spectrum of bariatric care. I have some great colleagues who do work specifically with people in bariatric surgery space post surgery online. I want to shout out Bariatric Food Coach and Active Bariatric are like my two favorite bariatric dietitians who really love working with people that are like 3, 5, 10 years out.
Yeah.
And they're super supportive of the GLP-1 medications and really knowledgeable. So shout out to them. And
Uh,
then, of course, at Vineyard, we work with people in bariatric surgery too.
so what's your experience like? How does it differ working from someone in the bariatric space versus the GLP-1 space?
Yeah. So good question. People who have had bariatric surgery and take a GLP-1 usually report, oh my God, it feels like I'm fresh post-op again.
Yeah.
We get back to that like tiny, tiny tummy feeling.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of how post surgery, there's a honeymoon period where the portion sizes get small again and you guys are really good at knowing like what protein is and focusing in on those things. I find that the bariatric surgery community, though, is overwhelmingly afraid of carbohydrates. So I'm often trying to get my post bariatric folks on GLP-1s to incorporate a little bit of carbohydrates into their
Mhm.
meals, a little bit of oatmeal, a little bit of a wrap, maybe a little bit of rice, because you really do need that energy on the GLP-1 medication. But
That's funny.
compared to people who have never had bariatric surgery who start the GLP-1 medications, they can tolerate usually bigger portions. And we focus more on eating for satiety, eating smaller meals less frequently. My bariatric folks might still need to do the 4 to 5, 6 meals a
Yeah.
day. They might still need a protein shake. They have to be a little more strategic with their hydration. The non bariatric folks on a GLP-1 kind of get a little more freedom to do like whatever they feel like works best for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny that you say that about the carbohydrates because that was me on my active weight loss. It was protein, 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 protein. Eat protein first, and if I get to a carb, which was not the case all the time, I would get to it, but it was always
Yeah.
protein, protein, protein.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you eat carbohydrates now? Do you
yes,
allow them now? Yeah,
yes,
cool. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Um, you mentioned. I'm sorry, I lost my
You're
train of
okay.
thought
I threw a
there.
question at you. Sorry.
um, the there's a lot of talk about diets within in the GLP-1 community. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
on things like the carnivore diet, intermittent fasting, keto, and all of those things while on a GLP-1?
I think they're unnecessary. I really do. I think that for a lot of folks, the extreme versions of dieting, where you're completely eliminating food groups or you're being extremely strict, those sometimes are effective for weight loss, specifically for people without the GLP-1 medication, because of some of those benefits of skipping meals controls for calories when you typically will overeat, having a very, very high protein diet. So, like this carnivore approach can be very satisfying, can be very filling. And so that prevents overeating of other foods. I'm not a fan of those diets for anyone, truly. I think, fruits and veggies are healthy and we need those foods in our
Yeah,
lives. And so, any diet that just completely eliminates food groups, I'm not a fan of. I get the temptation to layer in diets plus medicine because you're like, I'm going to have the best chance of losing weight. And I want to caution people to be patient and give weight loss a chance on the medicines without going to extremes. And I usually tell people to save tricks and strategies and schemes in your back pocket for later on if you need them.
yeah,
For most people, the medicines help with portion control and calorie control so much that you don't need to follow any very special diet, especially anything that completely restricts any food groups. Like I said, some people do find benefit in counting calories, for example, or following like a healthy diet, like a Mediterranean diet plan, for example. But
Excuse me.
we really don't need folks being too strict. Intermittent fasting and carnivore, I'm especially weary of. I worry that people are just going to feel like crap,
Yeah.
that they're not going to get in enough energy, that they're not going to get carbohydrates, they're not going to be hydrated, that they're not going to get enough fiber, and that we're going to have issues with constipation. We're going to have issues with fatigue. The carnivore and the keto diets, for example, are really, really high in fats.
Yeah.
And those tend to be the number one trigger for side effects. So I get nervous when I see folks following really strict diets on GLP-1 medications. I don't think they're necessary, and I think they're going to cause more difficulty and more issues than help with the weight loss goals.
So do you lean more towards eat what you want, but make sure it's, I don't know if you
Yeah,
sign good or bad to
yeah.
food groups, but eat
I
what you want,
I
but
try I try really hard not to say foods are good or bad. There are definitely foods that are health promoting, health positive. And then there are definitely foods that are not health positive, but they're fun and they're
yeah,
tasty and we're human. And they're not necessarily bad foods in moderation.
yeah,
The problem is most of us are really bad at moderation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so a single cookie is no big deal, but I could never stop at one cookie
yeah,
when I would get into those foods. So what I find is that people are able to find a more balanced relationship with food, a more positive relationship with food on these medicines, where it doesn't feel so all or nothing. It feels more realistic.
yeah,
I'll have people say, like, is this how normal people feel around food? Like, I could take it or leave it, or I can eat a little portion and be satisfied. A lot of people say they never knew what that felt like before until they
yeah,
started the GLP-1 medication. So I think that it's important to make healthy choices most of the time, but we certainly don't have to be perfect to find health benefits and to achieve our weight loss goals and to improve our health on these medicines.
great. You mentioned earlier tracking. Are you an advocate of tracking? Why or why not?
Personally, I don't track, mainly because I did it for 20 years and hated it.
Yeah,
It was the only way, like tracking macros, especially when I was an athlete and I was like trying to be strong and like really trying to like lose weight and be strong at the same time. I would always try to track macros and it would work until it didn't, right? It would
yeah,
work while I was doing it until I went on a cruise for a weekend and then, all hell
yeah,
broke loose. So I used to find that the only way that I could lose weight was with meticulously tracking and controlling everything I ate. When I started the GLP-1 medication and I realized that I could eat well without overeating, without tracking, it was like such a freedom.
yeah,
So I personally don't track anything. I will say though that my 15, 20 years of tracking experience, plus being a registered dietitian, I've got it all pretty much up in
yeah,
my brain. Like I can
yeah,
look at a plate of food and estimate how many calories it is and how much protein. Every once in a while, I will spot check tracking. I use an app called Synopsis. It's a picture tracking app. Every once in a while, for like a week or something, I'll be like, gosh, I don't know if I'm hitting my protein goals. I don't know where my calories are
yeah,
falling. Especially right now, I'm training really hard. I'm trying to work out more. I've been losing weight that I didn't really want to lose. And so I was like, I don't think I'm eating enough. So I'll track for like a week to make sure I'm
yeah,
eating enough. But I definitely don't, I'm not married to it like I used to
yeah,
be. I have patients who love tracking, right? That they find it very grounding, very helpful in planning, very helps them stay organized, makes them feel like they have awareness of what they're eating. Tracking can be an awesome learning experience. If you don't know what food is made of, if you don't know what has protein and what doesn't,
yeah.
tracking is an awesome experiment in learning those things. So I tell people if they love it, great, but it's definitely not the only strategy and it's not a requirement when working with me or when being on these GLP-1
Mhm.
medicines.
Yeah, that was me. My first 4 to 6 weeks on the active weight loss journey. I tracked just so I can get an idea of what I was eating
Hmm.
and getting in there. And once I got that routine down, I dropped it because it can become tedious, trying to plan
Some
out
people
every
get
little
really
thing.
obsessed with it. Some people
Yeah,
try to hit the numbers to the T when really it's just an estimate anyway. So being close enough is good enough. And I do like sometimes when people first start the medicines, if they're feeling really weak, if they feel like they have no energy, if they feel like they're struggling to eat, if they're losing weight too quickly, I like for them to track just so we can make sure they eat enough.
Yeah.
But rarely do people on the GLP-1s feel like they need to track to like get an upper limit.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
was protein intake. Um, there's a lot of discussion about what that number should be.
Hmm.
I think it's like 1.2 per 1.2 grams per kilogram of your weight, or something like that. Or and if it's pounds, it's 0.38 if you're using pounds, or somewhere around there.
Something. Yeah,
Um,
you're close.
there there was uh there was something I read earlier. I think you were the one that shared it over the summer. It was from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and
Yeah.
they had a section in there. I remember reading it when you posted it. They had a section in there about protein, and the reason why I'm curious about this question is because there were people wanted to know how to set your goal. Is it based off of your current weight? Is it based off of your ideal weight? And in that article, they talked about it should be ideally based off of your fat-free mass,
Right.
and it should be
Which one knows that?
1.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
absent of what your knowing what your fat-free mass is, then if you set a goal, it should be somewhere between 90 and 120 grams or something like that.
Yeah. That paper was a hot mess. They couldn't even decide what they wanted to say about
Yeah.
protein. You could ask 10 different dietitians who are all excellent, well studied, read all the papers, and they will have 10 different opinions
Yeah.
on what your protein goal should be. Especially, and then you ask 10 different doctors and 10 different personal trainers, you're going to get an insane wide range of protein.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than people think.
Yeah.
My default answer for like, if we had to pick a calculation, 1.2 grams per kilogram current body weight is probably fine for 90% of people. That is like my default.
Yeah.
Now, it's more complicated than that, hence why nobody can agree. And
Yeah.
I'll try to kind of break it down, but bear with me. I usually like write it out. For bariatric surgery patients, we know that there's a minimum that we don't want people to go below. And that's where they came up with that, like, would they say 80 to 120
Yeah.
range? They're like, if you don't know anything, if you can't pick a number, 80 to 120. And we're like, where the heck they come up with that? For most people, that will get them at least the recommended daily allowance, which is zero point 0.8 grams per kilo,
Yeah.
which for most people, I think is not enough. Now, when you think about these weight-based calculations, everybody weighs differently,
Yeah.
right? So if you are a 400, 500, 600 pound person, 300 kilo person, calculating 1.2 grams per kilo,
It's a lot of
you're at like
protein.
350, 400 grams of protein,
Yeah.
right? That is an insane amount of food to
Yeah.
eat and is just probably impractical.
Yeah.
So at the high range of body weight, these calculations are way less helpful. And similarly, at the low range of body weight, say somebody got to their goal and they're like 150 pounds, their protein goal, that what's that, 75 kilos, their protein goal is going to be like 90 grams,
Yeah.
but they're trying to build muscle. And you're like, I don't know if that's enough, right? So we get these like really big ranges. What I like to tell people is to figure out where they're at compared, like in their daily eating, what they're capable of eating compared to that 1.2 grams per kilo. If you're very easily over it and losing weight and doing well and feeling strong and lifting weights and you're over that goal, keep going. Keep eating more protein. It's really hard to eat too much protein.
Yeah.
If your normal is falling well short of that 1.2 grams per kilo, let's figure out how we add some more to get a little bit closer. But we don't necessarily need to be like to the gram because, again, it's an estimate and it doesn't have to be exact. The other thing that I tell people is that we have to remember why we recommend protein in the first place.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are really good at saying, oh, it's because of muscle. We want to preserve our muscle. In the absence of strength training, I don't care how much protein you eat, it's not going to do anything for your muscles unless you use your muscles.
Yeah.
So if we're focusing all this energy on eating a ton of protein, but we're not strength training, you're kind of wasting your energy on eating all this protein. Maybe
Yeah.
we should focus elsewhere.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember is that protein is great, but the only way that it actually gets into your muscles is with carbohydrate.
Mm.
So there's this concept called the protein sparing effect of carbohydrates. Protein has to be taken into your muscles to do all the work of repairing it. If you don't eat any carbs, your body will break down that protein to create carbohydrate to bring it into your muscle. So you think you're eating 100 grams of protein, but your muscle's only getting 75 because it had to break it down to use it for energy movement. If we eat carbohydrates, then we get to utilize all of that protein more efficiently. Big fan of carbohydrates for that reason.
Yeah.
So protein is great, but it's not the most important macronutrient by any means. I think protein and carbs are on like pretty equal playing field, if you ask me. The other reason we recommend typically for weight loss specifically a really high protein diet is because it's satisfying and it's filling.
Yeah.
Well, we just put you on a medicine that's going to make you feel full anyways.
Yeah.
So we used to recommend this like really high protein diet without the medicine because it would make it easier to stick to the diet because you would be full.
Fuller. Yeah.
But now you have a medicine that helps keep you fuller. So sometimes focusing on getting in so much protein will make you so full that you can't eat fruit and veg and fiber. So I see all the time in practice, people come to me and they're eating protein bars, drinking protein shakes, chicken, cottage cheese, yogurt, cheese, all these protein foods, and they're constipated. And you're like, you're not eating any fruit. You're eating one vegetable a day. We don't have any starchy, high fiber carbohydrates. Like we can chill on the protein and get more balance and you'll feel better and you'll still lose weight and your muscles will be just fine. So protein is important, but I think it gets overhyped a lot with most people on these medicines for sure.
And a follow up on that, this is another discussion that's been going on. What are your thoughts on the body's ability to process a certain amount of protein per meal?
Yeah, so that like 30 grams of protein is all you can process. It's important to know where that came from. And it was a study looking at bodybuilders who were trying to maximize protein utilization for bodybuilding. Right? Yes, your body would prefer that you spread out your protein intake throughout the day to maximize absorption throughout the day. Same thing with fiber, same thing with carbohydrates. We can only digest so much food at a time. Your body is primed to use a certain amount of energy and fuel, and whatever it doesn't use, it's going to store. That's a fact. So you're not doing yourself any favors eating one giant meal in the middle of the day and then nothing else for the rest of the day. You're probably not utilizing all of your nutrients that you're consuming. However, we are not all the same. So the fact that like to say that your body and my body only use 30 grams of protein each, exactly the same amount per meal is kind of crazy, like to even think about that. So everybody's different, everybody's diverse. It's based on weight. It's very hard to eat more than 40, 50, 60 grams of protein in a meal, if we're being honest. If you're spreading your intake out throughout the day, do we need to like worry about overdoing it? No. But if you're doing like a protein bar or a protein shake and a yogurt in the morning, and you're saying, I hit my 90 grams of protein for the day, I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the day, that's not really a good strategy either. Ideally, we would spread it out throughout the day. So it's not wrong. It's also not right. there's a lot of nuance there, and it's
Yeah.
very individualized. And again, if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a professional athlete, if you were really trying to get meticulous over minimal gains, then we worry about those details.
Yeah.
But for the average person who's just trying to be healthy and lose some weight, the details don't matter nearly as much.
All right. So I'm on a GLP-1. What does a well balanced meal look like for me?
Yeah, so I say it's not a meal unless it has a source of protein, ideally a leaner, lower fat protein, and depending on your size and your goals, a good serving. So like again, that 30 grams of protein is a good thing to target. Little more maybe for you if you're lifting weights, little less if you're like a little lady. But a good chunk of protein. I also really want everyone to incorporate some sort of high fiber carbohydrate with every meal. So that could be oatmeal or a wrap or bread or pasta, rice, beans, potatoes, a bagel. Starchy carbohydrates are good for you.
Yeah.
Ideally, we do the ones that have some fiber, but even if it's like a white pasta, occasionally, totally fine. We're going to portion control that. We're going to maybe say a half a cup to 1 cup, depending on your size and your goals. And then every meal needs to have a fruit or a vegetable or both. And so if 3 times a day, and if you're post bariatric surgery, maybe this is more like 4 or 5 times a day because it might be smaller. We're going to do protein, carbs, produce. And we're going to be mindful that if we have any added fats, like a little avocado or a little cheese or a little salad dressing, that we're careful with the portion size and we're not overdoing it on those things. And that's it. You kind of plug and play whatever foods you like from those categories into a meal and you call it good. And I like that strategy because you can do it cooking at home. You can do it at a restaurant. You can do it at fast food. You say, where's my protein? Where's my portion controlled carbohydrate? And where's my fruit or vegetable? I'm good to go. What that eliminates is fried food, any super high fat fried food. And then we're going to be careful and limit added sugars. But for the most part, all foods can fit.
Nice. Okay, so with these medications, people feel fuller faster. What is a good strategy of making sure you're getting in all your calories for the day and all your macronutrients?
Yeah. If we're not tracking, because we can always track, we can always calculate, kind of figure out where you're supposed to be, we could track. If we're not tracking, the best measure of whether or not you're eating enough is your rate of weight loss. Okay, so if we're losing quickly, if we're losing more than 2 or 3 pounds a week, we probably need to eat more. If we're losing slowly, we're less than a pound a week, we're kind of feeling like things aren't moving, then we need to eat less, right? That's the physics of the calorie balance. Now, that's hard to figure out if you're inconsistent. So, a big thing when working with me is before we even talk about calories or details or grams of anything, we're going to get a consistent meal routine pattern. We're going to get eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. We're going to not skip meals. We're not going to snack randomly. We're not going to have Monday through Friday where we eat a certain way and then on the weekends we eat a different way. We're going to get really consistent. Not necessarily the same foods every day, but we're going to eat on the same pattern. So that's step number 1 is, are we eating at least 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner? If we're struggling to feel hungry, like we just don't know if we're hungry, we don't know if we should eat, I tell everybody to start with eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even if you're not sure if you want to eat the food. You may surprise yourself and find that when you finally sit down and you start eating, you're like, oh yeah, I was hungry. This is good. I'm glad I'm doing this.
I've had that experience. Yeah.
It's very normal on GLP-1 medications for it not to compute that we're hungry. Like it just doesn't feel the same. We're not getting the same signals. We're definitely not probably going to feel it in our stomach. If we're waiting for our stomach to be growling to decide when to eat, we've waited way too long. So your hunger cues on these medicines might be just a little bit of a dip in energy, might be like a little bit of a headache, might be like you get a little moody, right? So I tell people, especially when they're first starting, take the guesswork out of it. Don't wait to be hungry and plan to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a pretty consistent schedule. It doesn't have to be exactly the same time, but early morning breakfast, middle of the day dinner, evening or middle of the day lunch, evening dinner. And I tell people to try not to snack in between those meals, especially if you're not sure if you're hungry. Like, especially if you're not hungry, we don't need to be snacking on a protein bar just to get more protein in,
Yeah.
because what that ends up doing is making it harder to eat the complete meal at dinner time. So I tend to tell folks to start with breakfast, lunch, dinner. Let's get in a routine, let's get consistent, and then let's see what happens to your weight. If it's going down too quickly, we're going to look for ways to add. If it's not moving, we're going to look for things to subtract. But that's really easy to do if you've had a consistent routine. Again, that's really hard to nitpick the details if you're all over the place.
Yeah.
So then we go in and we say, like, say we're not losing and we're trying to figure out where we're going to make adjustments. I like to tell people to look for the high ticket items. So what are you eating that is the highest in calories? We'll start there. Maybe we've got a salad dressing we could swap. Maybe we've got some cheese we could swap out. Maybe we've got a Frappuccino 3 times a week that we could cut back on. We start there, and then we'll get more specific if we need to with exactly how much chicken are we having or exactly how much rice are we having, because it's very rarely the healthy, balanced meal that is derailing your weight loss progress. It's usually snacks, fast food, alcohol, something fun that we could pull back on a little bit.
Yeah. So you mentioned the three traditional meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Uh, do you recommend that over smaller meals throughout the day,
Yeah, it really
or is
depends on the
that
person.
dependent on the person?
Yeah, it really depends. I think for a lot of people who are maybe post bariatric surgery that have a smaller tummy, we might make it 4 meals. We might say, let's start with breakfast, lunch, mid afternoon snack, and dinner, right? Like, we might schedule it that way if we're worried that the meals are too small. But for the most part, we start with 3 meals a day. And then it's like, if you're hungry, mid-afternoon, you've got these 3 meals kind of figured out and you're legitimately hungry mid-afternoon, awesome. Let's plan for a snack. Let's think about options. Let's figure that out. Or maybe you're a person who eats an early dinner, but you like to stay up late and you want something sweet at bedtime. Let's figure out what that like healthy dessert's going to look like, and let's schedule it and let's plan for it and let's strategize around it. Because the last thing we want on these medicines is for people to feel like they're still like unclear on what they're doing. These medicines really should make it easier to kind of chill out and relax and enjoy the process. And if we're super stressed about what can I eat, what can I not eat, I'd rather us just have a list of things that are good options that we are happy with, and that you always know you can have something that works for your goals when you're hungry, because you're still human, right? We might be on these medicines, but if you have a really hard workout and a crazy busy day at work and you didn't eat enough for lunch, you're going to still be hungrier in the evening than maybe you would be normally. So we still have to be able to make those sort of adjustments. Not every day is going to be perfect.
Can you talk about how metabolism changes as you lose weight, and how do you adjust for that?
Yeah, good question. It's not as severe or dramatic as people want it to be, unfortunately. Like, it would be great to blame the metabolism for our regain or for our difficulty with maintenance. If we get a lower metabolic rate because we're in smaller bodies, right? Not because we've damaged our bodies or because weight loss necessarily causes harm. We're just in smaller bodies. And so as we lose weight, our deficit to continue to lose weight, the window gets smaller. We might need to make adjustments. We might need to eat less when we're in a smaller body to continue to lose or to maintain that weight loss. It definitely does happen. We can offset that a little bit by building muscle and exercising. and we don't want to be in too extreme of a calorie deficit to lose weight, because we don't want to lose weight too quickly. So if we lose weight more slowly, we protect that metabolism a little bit better. But at the end of the day, it's 100, 200 calorie difference. It's not as significant of an issue as we would like it to be. I think it would take a lot of pressure off of us to be mindful of the calories as we lose weight. But the metabolism really is not as big of a driver of weight regain, for example, as a lot of people want to blame it for. It tends to be we just return to old habits.
Yeah. So, and as people are in this caloric deficit and they're working out on those days that they're working out, should they consume more to lessen the deficit for that day, or because I mean,
If
even
they're
if you
hungry.
do, if you use a app like MyFitnessPal, it gives you credit for those calories burned during a workout. That it gives you more room to eat to still hit your caloric goal for the day.
Yeah, good question. It depends on how the deficit was calculated in the first place. So I'm not sure how MyFitnessPal does it, but I think that they don't take exercise into account when they calculate your goal. And then they give you credit for exercise.
Hmm.
So then they give you more calories on the day that you exercise, right? When I calculate somebody's calorie needs, I'm going to ask you to tell me about your day, your week of exercise. Like, what's the week look like? What are you doing? Are you running, lifting, Zumba, Pilates, and you're active all the time and you're on your feet at work? Like you're a teacher and you never sit down and you've got little kids that you're running around and you go to the gym and you go to Zumba. When I calculate your needs, I'm going to factor that in
Yeah.
and give you more calories to start. So then if you eat more than that, then we're probably going over what you need. Similarly, if you tell me that you don't do any exercise at all and you're sedentary and you're not ready to start exercising, cool. But your calorie goals that I'm going to calculate for you are going to be pretty low. Now, that's like very minimal exercise. If you suddenly started exercising more, we're going to need to
Adjust it.
recalculate and
Yeah.
give you more food, right? So and again, it's an estimate. So what you burn on your watch or on a machine is not very reliable number. And the estimate that we come up with when we calculate your calories is also not a super reliable number. So at the end of the day, what we're looking for is your rate of weight loss and your appetite. If you're losing weight really quickly and you're really hungry, we need to add more food. If you're losing weight slowly and you're still really hungry and you feel like you need to eat more than what we've kind of come up with, maybe we need to go up in dose.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's normal on these medicines to still be hungry sometimes,
Yeah.
especially after a workout. You're still human. So, if your appetite is saying that you're hungry and you feel like you need to eat a little bit more that day, I think that's okay. We'll see what happens with your weight loss and your goals and make adjustments. We can make adjustments later. We don't have to make that decision like in the moment.
Yeah. Nice. So
Yeah.
these medications um, help with appetite control. How do you, as a dietitian, help people change it to so it's a lifestyle thing as well?
Yeah. I think these medicines can be really interesting in helping people tell the difference, maybe for the first time in their life, between food noise, cravings, and physical hunger.
Yeah.
I feel like people who struggle with their weight, myself included, before these medicines, I only ever knew hungry all the time or super stuffed. But it's a spectrum. There's a whole bunch of space in between.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between food noise for like can't stop thinking about it, obsessive, gotta eat all the things, food noise that drives us crazy, and a craving. And normal humans who don't struggle with their weight still have cravings. The thing with a craving is it easily satisfied? then you're good to go. That's cool. Like that's normal. And I think these medicines can help people learn how to navigate those decisions a little better, like see the nuance for themselves. So if for whatever reason they decrease their dose or they have to stop their medication, they at least have a new awareness of what to expect and what is what. And I think being able to name, okay, I am not physically hungry, but I am having food noise, then makes it easier to make a decision about what to do with those food choices. Whereas before it was so confusing because we just knew we were hungry.
Yeah.
So I think that can be helpful. I I wish it were the kind of situation where you start these medicines, you learn new healthy habits, and then that's going to carry you for the rest of your life and you don't need the medicine anymore. I think that that ignores the biology of the whole thing.
Yeah.
A lot of us had healthy habits. We knew what to do. We just physically were so freaking hungry we couldn't not overeat.
Yeah.
And so I know people are hopeful. Okay, I'm going to use these medicines for a year. I'm going to learn how to live healthy. I'm going to implement all these healthy habits and lifestyle changes. And then I'm going to stop the medicine. I'm going to keep the weight off. I think that's a great thing to work towards, but I think we always have to be realistic that the biology, the driver to eat, is so powerful that even with an amazing support system and resources and habits and exercise routine and grocery skills, and even with the best tools in your toolbox, you might still just be really freaking hungry.
Yeah.
And it translates, and it's insidious because it translates into a few more bites, a slightly bigger portion size, one extra snack.
Yeah.
And so maybe you don't return to binge eating, maybe you don't return to really poor habits, but it's very likely that you will be hungry to a point where you end up eating more and more. And that's where the regain happens when people stop these medicines.
Nice. Great question, and I mean, great answer. I'm hoping to be on this medication for life. uh,
Oh, me too.
yeah.
I joke all the time that you're gonna have to pry it out of my hand. I just got a letter from our insurance company that we lost coverage. So
Yeah. I remember him
um,
posting that.
I've been through the ringer with this. I mean, with the I started with the Monjaro coupon that was $25, right?
Yeah.
Like the golden age of amazingness where we got these medicines for like 9 months for $25. And then I paid $100 or $500 a month for a year. And then I got insurance coverage where I was paying $25 a month. And then I switched jobs and I switched to my husband's plan and we were paying $60 a month for Zepbound.
Yeah.
So I had 1 year full price and now 1 year covered. And now next year we're going back to full price because they dropped coverage. They raised our premium too. So it's like we're paying more and we're getting
Yeah.
less
I'm getting
covered.
less. Yeah.
And my husband and I are on Zepbound and like Lexapro, and the Lexapro is like $8 or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So it's like those are the only things we use our health insurance for. Generally, we're pretty healthy, right? And it's like, why are we paying all this money and they don't even cover the one thing
Yeah.
that we use? It's really frustrating. I'm really lucky. Vineyard, Dr. Spencer, um, he has hired all these people who are also on the medicines like me. Teresa, our insurance specialist, Amber, one of our other dietitians, are also on the GLP-1 medications. And it's really hard as a small business to find insurance plans that cover
Yeah.
these medicines. My husband works for a massive national company and they
Yeah.
dropped coverage, right?
Yeah.
Um, so as a small business, we can't find a plan that covers GLP-1s, but Dr. Spencer is going to give us all a stipend to cover the Lilly Direct. So
That's
thank
great.
goodness. That's great. It's an amazing thing, but most employers just aren't doing that. I think people still view obesity and weight management as a personal choice failing because they don't understand the biology or the science behind it. So yeah, I hope to be on some. I say I hope to be on Zepbound forever, but I'm aware enough that there's going to be future medications.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that one day all of these medicines are so many options that they're so much more affordable. Um, and I'm open to trying other options for maintenance, for example. if it's more affordable. But for now, like if you told me you'd give me Wegovy for free, I'd be like, I don't think so. I think I'm gonna buy Zepbound.
All right, my last question for you, and then we'll talk about your book a little bit.
Yeah.
What are the biggest nutrition myths you hear about GLP-1 medications?
I think people are overly terrified of the muscle loss conversation. I think I think they're looking at it from the wrong perspective. Weight loss results in muscle loss, regardless of the method. And Ozempic and GLP-1s have gotten this like bad rap for like taking people's muscle. It's just effective at weight loss.
Yeah.
So you have people losing weight. Any method of weight loss, bariatric surgery, self-directed dieting,
Medical
starvation, all of
condition,
these
yeah.
things, medical conditions, all of these things, you lose muscle. We've already talked about protein. The most important thing, though, to mitigate the muscle loss through weight loss is to not lose weight too quickly and to strength train. And when I say strength train, people think I'm saying get in the gym an hour, 5 times a week. It doesn't have to be that serious.
Yeah.
It could be 2 or 3 times a week, 20, 30 minutes. If you're new to strength training, like I'm jealous. I wish I could go back in time and be new to strength training. Because you've got so much potential to put on muscle even
Yeah.
while you're losing weight if you're brand new to strength training. And it can be as simple as air squats and push-ups and machines at the gym or a little workout video at home. Like it doesn't have to be so crazy. But as we progress, as we get stronger, that's where you're supposed to really layer in the strength training. So I think that we overblow the muscle loss thing as like this big scary thing in the same way that we do the side effects. Most people, if they have side effects on these medicines, they're mild, they're tolerable. People choose the benefits over the queasiness. They're like, oh no, I love this medicine, even though I'm nauseous 2 times a week. I'll keep it. So most people are able to deal with it pretty well. The nutrition myths too, like I hate when I see people who are going low carb on these medicines. I'm like, you don't know what you're missing. Your body is now more efficient at using carbohydrates for
Yeah.
energy on these medicines. You're no longer insulin resistant. So you're going to use carbs for energy. You're going to feel amazing. You're going to want to work out. You're going to have a good mood. Your brain's going to work better. Like, please eat carbohydrates. I was adamant when I wrote the cookbook that we put the pasta dish on the cover because, like, no, people need to know that there's carbs in here.
Yeah.
Because every single meal I make sure has carbohydrates. So I think if there's a nutrition myth, it's that you have to be low carb, and it's just that's so far from the truth. I almost always end up recommending people increase their carbs.
Okay, I lied. I said that was the last question, but carbs. Should it be
Yeah.
simple carbs or complex carbs, or does it matter?
Yeah. Ideally, mostly complex. So ideally, most carbohydrate choices have fiber. But there are situations where a simple carbohydrate, like before a run, for example, like a little fig bar that has some sugar in it, could be a good thing.
Yeah.
So most of the time, like if we're putting together meals, we want those carbs to come with fiber. So complex carbs are better.
Yeah. All right. All right. You got, to the audience, please
Oh, that's
remember
so nice.
if you're going to be asking a question, please put it in the chat with 3 Qs in front of it so I can find it quickly. But if Summer wants to talk about her book there on the left, Living Your Healthiest Semaglutide Life, what
Yeah.
what are people going to get by purchasing that book?
First of all, I love this little picture that you threw up. That is so nice of you. Okay. So my book is really when they came to me and pitched me to write this book, I said, I don't want it to be a diet book. I don't want it to say, eat this, not that, um, protein goals, whatever. And then the publisher was like, no, that's what we want you to write. And I said, well, I want to tell a story. And so this book really goes through, it has the nutrition stuff, it has the guidance, it has all the categories of all the macronutrients and all the foods, and there's food lists, then there's meal plans, and there's grocery lists, like there's all that stuff. But the first half of the book is all about, I tell my story, my struggles with weight. I tell the story of obesity as a disease, where we've been, where we are now, how the science has evolved, how these medicines were discovered, how they work, what these medicines do and don't do, some of the big myths around them, some of the older medicines that we had before the newer medicines, and really dive into that context so people can understand the science. I also talk about just like the practicalities. There's a chapter in this book that everyone seems to love. It's called Navigating Insurance in America is a Bitch. We just talked about it. There's a whole chapter about the issues around cost and access and affordability and insurance and what's coming in the future. And so it really sets the scene. I think even if you're not on a GLP-1 medication, but you're curious, it gets you started with like the facts. Like it's very evidence-based, science-based. Like this is the context of the space.
Yeah.
And then it dives into getting started, those first few weeks, what you need to know, then the active weight loss phase. We cover the maintenance phase as well and how that's different or maybe not so different. We talk about fitness, strength training, muscle. And again, at the end, there's all sorts of stuff about like goal setting and dealing with family members and having tough conversations, or how to talk to your doctor about these medicines, how to find a dietitian. Like it really is everything I wish everyone knew about being on these medicines,
Yeah.
all in one book. Lots of pictures and graphs and, like I said, food lists and all sorts of things. And it's a great resource too if you are like struggling with something and you're like, I think I read that. You can go to the appendix, find the nausea section, and then find all the tips for nausea.
Nice.
Um, like this one, we talked about a little bit today about like hunger and fullness and how to tell the difference between really full and really stuffed and like all the
Hmm.
nuance in between. So just lots of tools and things for like every question that you have had somebody ask you in a thing, like, what about electrolytes? What about artificial sweeteners? What about intermittent fasting? I tried to cover as much of that as I could in
So
this
a
book.
complete
So
guide.
I'm really, it's a complete guide and it's not just for nutrition, but also mindset. So I talk about how to approach this journey, how to think about it as a lifestyle change, as a health journey, um, kind of breaking up with the focus of the number on the scale. There's a whole section on like the power of non-scale victories and how to find motivation, how to change habits. I'm really proud of it. I can't believe I wrote a book. Um, my dad is like making fun of me because I used to tell him he really wanted me to get a PhD. Like real like
Yeah.
education is everything. My Cuban father just like really wanted me to be a doctor, and really wanted me to get a PhD. And I always told him, because I'm kind of old now, and I was like, I'm not going back to school. I got little kids. I got a mortgage. I got a job, and I don't want to write a paper. And then I wrote a book. But I missed almost every deadline. I have ADHD. I was really bad at writing this book. Like I really had struggled. I wrote this book mostly walking around my neighborhood, talking to my phone in voice to text.
Oh, wow.
So I dictated a lot of it. Like I'd walk laps around my neighborhood and I'd like voice to text, and then I'd come back to the computer and edit it. So it sounds like me. So it's
Yeah.
funny. And
Yeah.
there's lots of curse words that got edited out, unfortunately.
Oh,
My publisher said I used the F word a little too much, so I lost most of those. But some of them got to stay.
yeah.
So I try to make it fun, easy to read, really accessible. I'm really proud of it. You can get it anywhere you buy your books. My biggest complaint is the title, because obviously I'm on Zepbound. I've never been on
Yeah.
semaglutide. I'm not a big fan of semaglutide. I
Yeah.
lost the fight over the title, with my publisher because it's international.
Yeah.
It's in Mexico, UK, Portugal, Brazil, Germany, and Canada. And most of those countries don't have tirzepatide yet.
Yeah.
So it's been translated to a bunch of different languages, and it is really written for like an international audience. Although I do have that chapter about American insurance,
Yeah.
that I hope the international audience found amusing. But So that's that book. And then everybody wanted recipes, which this book just doesn't have recipes.
Yeah.
So then I wrote cookbook. So we got 75 recipes, more detail, more food focus in this one.
Nice. So
Yeah.
again, you can find the links to these books in the description of this video. The Living Your Healthiest Semaglutide Life is available now, and the cookbook is January, I believe.
It's on pre-order now, so
Yeah.
you can find it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, I think. And it will arrive in early January, first week of January, which is a great time to have a book hit
And
the
all
shelves.
and Summer's TikTok and Instagram are also linked in the description if you want to follow her. She has some great content. It's funny. I love the content that she puts out. So
Can be
yes,
a
please
little
go check.
sassy sometimes. A little
Yeah,
sassy, can get a little political, but food and nutrition and weight and health and all of that stuff is political. So
yeah, absolutely,
I appreciate you letting me be here.
absolutely. I thank you for coming. I have a special announcement here, so bear with me for a minute. All right.
Something happened in the world while we were live. Well, what's
So
that?
next week, you guys aren't going to believe this. I got the man to pop out. It's Darium is coming next week, the 18th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, to talk about his journey. The guy that cheers us all on, he's all in all of our comments, cheering us on. He's going to pop out and talk about himself and his Substack channel. So please show up for Darium as he shows up for all of us. I can't wait for this one. I'm excited about that one.
Exciting. He's a good follow.
Yeah. All right, back to the questions here. All right, first up, shout out to G's101 for the super chat. He says, nice job today, Charles and Summer. Keep up the great work. Appreciate you, G's. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for the super chat. And now for the questions, we have about 27 minutes. Let's see, the first one. All right, from Grant. Would you agree that portion control is key on a GLP-1?
I do. Yeah, and portion control of the high ticket items especially. So most of the time we could probably eat more protein food, more fruit and vegetable. Like I don't stress out about portion control of like traditionally healthy foods for the most part. But if and when we do include more fun foods, the ability to practice portion control with those foods is sometimes for a lot of people like the first time they've ever been able to feel in control of the portion that they're eating with a food or even feel satisfied off a small amount of food. And that can be really life changing when you recognize like, you know, I can go out to eat, I can order a tasty meal and I can stop when I'm full and no longer overeat. That practicing that portion control can be really enlightening. I used to eat such massive meals. I can't. I feel like people complain now. I post pictures of my food. They're like, your meals are so big. I'm like, you should have seen what I used to eat. I used to be able to put away a ton of food. I still get to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done, you know? And that's pretty cool. A lot of people, I don't know, did you watch the South Park episode where
Oh,
Cartman
yeah. Yeah.
had that? He was like, I feel full. I've never felt this before. I was like, yes, it's so real.
Yeah.
A lot of
They
people
did a
say that.
great job of capturing what it's like to
They
have
did
be on a
such a good job. It
GLP-1.
was so good.
All right, next question. I think you already touched on this, but your
Mhm.
thoughts on a GLP-1 user tracking weekly calories, macros versus daily calorie and macros?
Ooh, I love the question between weekly and daily. That's such a good conversation because it's very normal to eat a different amount every day, right? Some days you're hungrier, some days you're not. Especially on a GLP-1, you may find that the first few days of the week you have a lower appetite. And then as the week progresses closer to your next shot day, you have a higher appetite. I think depending on the individual, I think it could be an interesting strategy where you figure out your calorie goal, what would be your deficit goal, and you adjust it to say, okay, days 1 through 3, I'm going to have 1,400 calories because I'm just not hungry, and that's going to be plenty. And then day, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're going to be at 1,700, when maybe our math told us we should be at 1550,
Mm.
right? So we have low days and high days, totally an option. The weekly versus daily is also interesting because there are some apps out there that allow you to make those adjustments, that allow you to say, okay, on Friday night, I know I'm going out to dinner, so I'm going to bump Friday up to 2,500 calories, and then it takes away from the other days. I think that's a reasonable strategy as well. What we don't want to get into though is like a binge restrict kind of pattern where we overeat one day and then we slash the calories the next day to like make up for it, because that just is going to perpetuate. Then you're hungrier, then you overeat, then you undereat. We don't want to do that compensation thing. But it could be an interesting strategy to say like, okay, these are my goals for the week. And to divvy it up day by day just based on your appetite is totally reasonable. And I think for some individuals that would really work well. But for other people, I tell people when I'm coaching about tracking, I give people a range.
Yeah.
Anyways, I say, as long as we're kind of in this space on protein and calories, you're good. And so if you're not hungry, if you're more hungry, like work within the range. And that's kind of the similar concept. That's a cool question.
Darium always has them.
Good question. Yeah, love it.
All right, next one's also from Darium. How do I recognize the difference between true physical hunger, emotional hunger, and if food noise actually return while on a GLP-1 medication?
Yeah. My first question when people come and say that they're having food noise or they're struggling or they're unclear about their appetite is, are we eating enough? Right? That's my first question. Are you eating meals? Are you hitting protein? Are you getting fiber? Are you eating? Because 9 times out of 10, the answer will be, I'm kind of skipping breakfast. I don't really eat lunch, or lunch is just an apple. I'm like, okay, so you're probably physically hungry. If you are eating enough, like you're like, dude, I'm eating 3 square meals a day and I am still in my head thinking about food. I'm not losing weight. I'm stalled. I'm thinking about food constantly. Then I believe you that that's food noise, right? I think we've got to like let patients make their own decisions sometimes about how they feel around foods because it's very personal. I know my food noise is worse in the evenings when my kids are being crazy. And if I didn't eat enough that day, I find myself standing in my kitchen, opening my pantry and looking at the goldfish and the chewy bars, like foods that I don't even like. And I'm like, why, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Right. Like that to me is like food noise, or I get in my head, like, we should go out for ice cream, or like, that to me is like food noise. I kind of had it today actually, because I worked out this morning, had a small breakfast, worked out, and then on the way home from the gym, stopped at the grocery store. Mistake. I was hungry. I did not eat enough. I was physically hungry, but I was in Aldi and they have all of the Christmas candy out.
Mm.
And I walked down, I was looking at the Christmas decorations and I saw the Christmas candy. And I had a moment of like, ooh, that all looks really good. And I almost started and I was like, nope, go home, eat protein, eat your food. You'll be fine. You don't need it.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be real with people on these medicines. Like that situation is still going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not like suddenly immune to tasty food. I think that the medicine helps me though say no more often than I would say yes. And so I'm at max dose, so I have nowhere to go. But I
Yeah.
joke with Dr. Spencer all the time. If they made a 20, I want it. Like put me first in line for like the next dose up
Yeah.
for Zepbound, because I'm still hungry and I still have those moments where I have to like make a choice that aligns with my goals. So it's not easy breezy all the time. But I think, like, how do we decide whether it's emotional or physical? The first step is like, have you eaten enough? And if you haven't, like, it could be both, right? You
Yeah.
could be both physically hungry and emotionally hungry. We got to make sure that we're physically satisfied, and then we know, you really can know whether or not you're reaching for food to cope with a feeling or out of boredom. Boredom is an emotion. If we're trying to distract ourselves, like, one of my issues sometimes is like, if I have a task that I need to do, like I told you, I was really bad at writing my book. Like, I miss deadlines. Like, I got to take my ADHD medicine and like dial in. I have a bad habit of distracting myself from tasks with snacks. And I recognize that that's a habit. That's not biological. That
Yeah.
is like a habit that I've got to rethink about or have a strategy for.
Yeah.
So I can snack, but it needs to be fruit. It needs to be something healthy. It needs to be aligned with my goals.
Yeah.
So it's very individualized, that whole emotional hunger, craving, food noise. But the number one question is making sure you're eating enough first.
Nice. All right. Juanita wants to know, normally I'm less hungry right after taking my shot. Then my hunger increases later in the week. Should I be forcing myself to eat even when I'm not hungry or just follow what my body is telling me?
I don't think we should ever be forcing ourselves to eat. Like, if you're to the point where like you just literally cannot stomach anything, like, we definitely don't want that. I would say that in the early part of the week, it would be important to at least make sure you're hitting your protein goals, that you're eating consistently, but knowing that those meals might just be smaller. And then allowing yourself as the week goes on to let those meals be a little bigger. I do sometimes see that people will think they're not hungry in the beginning of the week, undereat significantly, and then that makes them even more hungry as
At
the
the end
week
of the
goes
week.
on.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do need to make sure we're eating enough in the first half of the week so that our body is not trying to make up for it later in the week. So there needs to be a little bit more equivalence and
Balance. Yeah.
balance. Um, it's a really good question. Sometimes, like in our clinic, we'll have patients who really struggle with a certain dose, like it's too strong for a few days, but then they're really hungry. What our doctors will do under the doctor's supervision is say, like, okay, half dose, and then 4 days later, half dose, like, which is easier to do if you're doing the vials,
Yeah.
so that people get a more steady appetite control over the course of 7 days instead of like tanking it and then really
Yeah.
hungry. So on a case by case basis, sometimes our doctors will do that for folks too.
All right. From the male B, what's your take on daily fiber targets for women? My doctor says aim for 45 grams, which I do. She's on maintenance for 17 months, dosing once per month.
Yeah. Because you're in maintenance and you're only dosing once per month, 45, tolerating that is probably fine for you. Probably good, actually. You're probably full, satisfied. All that fiber keeps you fuller longer. Um, for you specifically, 45 sounds really reasonable. Now, the actual RDA for women is like 25 to 30, especially in that like first year on a GLP-1 where we're like actually having strong appetite suppression. If you can get to 25, I'm like super proud of you. Like, it's really hard. Fiber is hard. It's really filling, and it's in lots of like healthy foods that aren't necessarily the tastiest,
Yeah.
right? So like, we're not drawn towards foods that are super high in fiber. So it takes some strategizing and some planning to get in 45 grams of fiber is like amazing. If you can tolerate it, there really is no upper limit, but we would want to get somewhere around 25. I see people on GLP-1s going for super high fiber goals, like that 45, actively on a GLP-1 in their first year. And they're like bloated and they're stuffed and they're uncomfortable and they're overly full and they can't eat anything else. Like, we don't need that much fiber. I think if we're around 25, we're probably good.
Thank you. And one more from Mel. Can you clarify the debate around eating late? I start eating around 2 to 3 and stop around 9. It didn't slow me down. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's no rule that says you can't eat late. I have some folks who, like, depending on their schedule, I really don't mind like where we spread out the meals. I just want there to be three kind of spread out meals in the day. So if you start your day late and then your last meal is even later, and that's just your schedule and that's like your appetite rhythm, like I think that's cool. Most people, though, start their day in the morning. And if we're waiting all mid morning, all day until lunch to try to eat something, like we've missed breakfast, we don't always make really healthy choices at that lunchtime. We're more likely to overeat. We're more likely to have difficulty there. So, generally speaking, I like folks to spread their meals throughout the day, but if it works for you, it works for you. Like that's very much like the dietitian answer. Like it depends. And then different strokes for different folks. Like if it works for you and you're feeling good and you have good energy, you're losing weight, you're hitting your protein, you're getting fruits and veggies and like life is good, no reason to change it. The only reason we would maybe adjust that is if you felt like you were having tons of food noise or you weren't making healthy choices or your energy was suffering or you were having side effects, like then we might play with different strategies. But if it's working for you, no reason to change it.
I think this may be the last one. What are your thoughts on OMAD?
One meal a day. Why? Why? I think I think that if you are not on a GLP-1 and you're able to eat enough and it works for you and like, fine, whatever. But I think it's silly. I think it's really silly. And I think it's even more silly on a GLP-1. You're really going to be severely under eating. It's going to be really hard to get that 1.2 grams per kilo in one meal a day.
Yeah.
I don't know how we would achieve that. So we're definitely not getting 25 grams of fiber in a day. And then we talked earlier about how it really is beneficial to spread out your nutrition throughout the day instead of trying to get it all in one meal. I'm not a fan. I think it's kind of a glorified, kind of disordered practice, honestly, because you'll see folks who use that like OMAD strategy on TikTok or whatever. They're like masking their hunger throughout the day with an energy drink and a coffee and sugar-free gum. And like they're hungry. Like just eat 3 meals a day and like stop when you're full. It kind of reminds me a little too much of like a binge restrict pattern. I don't love it.
I would have to
Oh,
agree with Sway's Journey to Fit, my favorite internet dietitian. I agree.
well, thanks.
There's a lot of
I'm
comments in here praising you. So if you get a chance,
not.
once it's done loading on YouTube, you can go through the comments as the live's going. But there's a lot of comments in here thanking you and praising you.
You guys are so nice. I am not dietitians' favorite dietitians. I'm pretty critical actually of a lot of other dietitians. I think far too often folks in dietitians in general, I'm going to get in trouble here, are first of all overwhelmingly white women with privilege, with no lived experience of struggling with any sort of health problems, right? Most dietitians mean well, they want to help people, but they really come at approaching nutrition from a lens of, well, if you just knew better, you would do better. And most of us know too much for our own good. Most of us, by the time we get to the point of starting on GLP-1 medications or having bariatric surgery, we've done all the things, right? A lot of people have read so many nutrition books that they know more than me sometimes about nutrition. They come with all these details and I'm like, that's kind of irrelevant. I let that leave my brain when I quit
Yeah.
school, like when I left school. I like to come at nutrition from a what's going to work in the real world, in your real life, in your budget, with foods that you enjoy, where you can still go to a family dinner and not be the weird one that has to eat special food, where you can still go out on a date night and have a cocktail. Like, I want you to live your best, healthy, amazing, full life. And it's okay if that includes really tasty food. We just need a strategy where most of the time we are doing our due diligence to take care of ourselves with nutrition in a way that's actually health promoting. And far too often, especially on the internet, people get so lost in the weeds of all the minor details that they're not doing the boring basics. Like they're not eating vegetables, they're not walking, they're not drinking water. Like we got to do the basics, and then most of the details kind of work themselves out and we don't even have to worry about them. So I don't want to sell people bullshit that doesn't work. And I'm a big fan of these medicines, but I also know that like not everybody can access them.
Right.
And the way I teach nutrition works for people who are on these medicines, but also can be helpful for just the average person looking to make better health choices or food choices. Because I believe it's all about the mindset that so many of us live in this like all or nothing kind of experience with health and weight and food and nutrition. We're either all in or we're all out. When in reality, there's like a really happy, healthy place in the middle that's kind of fun. That we get the best of both worlds. And that's where I like to help people find out where they can make the changes they want to make, but not make it their whole personality.
Love that. Love that. Well, if there's no other questions, I want to thank you, Summer, for coming on and blessing us with your expertise. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come. I know you have a busy schedule. I know you got an appointment that you have to run to. So again, I appreciate you and thank you again.
Yeah, thanks
And
for having me.
thank you for everyone for joining us. Appreciate you.